Hello viewers, welcome to Kids Auto and Truck Repair. Today we have a 2015 Porsche Macan with a 3.0 liter engine. The customer complaint on this vehicle is the check engine light remains on the dash while the engine is running, and the vehicle is losing power tremendously. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go in the vehicle so we can confirm the customer's complaint. After confirming the customer's complaint, then we're going to connect the scan tool to the vehicle to see what kind of trouble codes we have in the engine computer. Now, before we go in the vehicle, I want to ask you guys a question. We were talking earlier about the name of this Porsche. It's spelled M-A-C-A-N. I mean, is it Macan? Is it Macan? Let us know in the comment section what you think, how this is pronounced. And also, why are some people calling this a Porsche? Is it Porsche or Porsche? So, I don't know. I think it's a Porsche. Some people call it Porsche. I'm curious to figure out why. So let us know in the comments why some people call it Porsche. So now let's go in the vehicle. So now I'm going to start the engine so we can confirm the customer's complaint. So as you can hear, the engine is running. So right there, customer's complaint confirmed. The check engine light remains on the dash. The brake light also remains on, and the traction control light remains on the dash as well. And we have a couple messages over here on this side of the dash. It looks like it's gonna need brake pads too. Okay, the stop-start system is also not working, so it looks like this vehicle is gonna need a bunch of stuff. All right, so now I'm gonna turn off the engine. I'm going to turn the key on. I got the scan tool connected to the vehicle. So let's scan the engine computer and see what we got. Right there, the scan tool has identified the vehicle, 2015 Porsche Macan S with a 3.0 liter engine. This vehicle has a lot of miles. It has 187,000 miles. Interesting. Now, the customer just wants us to fix what's causing the check engine light to remain on the dash. And I don't know if I mentioned this already, the owner of this vehicle is one of our subscribers here on our YouTube channel. His name is Emmanuel. So Emmanuel, I want to give you a shout out. So thank you for bringing business to us. He told me that he watches our videos and he enjoys what we do here. After watching a couple of our videos, he decided to bring his vehicle to us for service. So Emmanuel, once again, thanks for your business. So now let's do a code scan. Let's see what we got. Now, when I drove the vehicle in the shop, I noticed that the engine was shaking. The front end of the vehicle is shaking. It felt like this had a misfire. And as you can see right here, we have misfire codes. The first code is an OEM specific code. So the code is 2306H/8966. It says refer to OEM repair information for code description. Okay. And then the second code is P0302 bar ignition module cylinder 2. So again, when a vehicle misfires, you guys, most of you are very familiar with this. We've done a lot of misfires here. We've fixed a bunch of misfires here at the shop. A misfire can be caused by lack of fuel or lack of spark in a specific cylinder or a mechanical problem in a specific cylinder. So we need to figure out what's causing this engine to misfire. The scan tool is done scanning all the modules. So we have misfire on cylinder 2. We also have a misfire on cylinder 3. And then we have code P0599. It says thermostat driver. And then we have another code. We have P1025 fuel high pressure adaptation. So we have a P0016 crank sensor position to intake cam sensor bank 1. And then we have a P0017 crank sensor position to exhaust camshaft bank 1. So we have cam sensor codes what I'm trying to, I mean, if you have a crank sensor issue can cause, sometimes can throw misfire codes, but based on the codes that I'm looking at here, we could have a couple separate issues. So the misfire by itself can be caused by something else, and we could also have cam sensors that are failing intermittently, or that are failing, or that have already failed. So we're gonna keep that in mind. So let's scroll down and see what we have. Okay, so we have a bunch of codes here, and then on the generic side of the tool, so we have, so what's interesting is that we have, interesting. So we have a misfire on cylinder 3, and then we have crank position, cam position correlation bank 1 sensor B, and then the last code here is P0016 crank position camshaft position correlation bank 1 sensor A. So it looks like both sensors on the bank 1 are giving us codes. So both cam sensors on bank 1s need to be looked at. Okay, I mean not bank 1s, there's just one bank 1. So both cam sensors on bank 1 need to be looked at. So now what I'm gonna do is I am going to erase all these codes. All these codes are saved in the scan tool. I'm gonna erase all of them, and then we're gonna start the engine and let it run just for a little bit, and then we're gonna see what codes come back first. So we have a bunch of them, 11 codes. Let's clear the codes. I'm gonna lean towards checking the misfire first. We're gonna check the misfire codes, and then we're gonna check the cam sensors on bank 1. Okay, so our thermostat driver code is coming back right away. Let's clear this. Okay, so just the thermostat code keeps coming back. Let's go to our data, and then let's look at some misfire data. I want to make sure that it's cylinder 3 and cylinder 2 that are misfiring. So we're going to look at our misfire counters here. I'm going to start the engine. So as you can hear, the engine is running. The engine is shaking. It's definitely misfiring right now. So the check engine light is now off. Let's see if these cylinders will start counting. So engine roughness, cylinder 2 is counting. So this guy over here, 2 is counting, 4 is also counting, and then what else? Even 6 is counting. Interesting. I mean, I don't know if the camera is going to pick this up. This vehicle is definitely misfiring. There's a misfire on this cylinder, okay? We have a couple of cylinders that are misfiring. Cylinder 5 also is starting to misfire. So look at these numbers over here, guys. This, that, and then these 2 over here. Okay, interesting. So now I'm going to turn off the engine. I'm going to turn the key on. I don't want to run this for too long. Which directions are we going to go? I hear the fan running. How do you turn this off? There are so many buttons here. It's off. Okay. Now we need to figure out what's causing the misfire. Are we missing spark? Are we missing fuel? Do we have a mechanical problem? So now I'm going to do, let's see if we can put this in clear flood mode. I'm going to step on the accelerator pedal all the way to the floor. Then I'm going to crank the engine. Let's see if it has clear flood mode. If it does, I'm going to listen to how the engine sounds. We want to see a nice and consistent engine cadence as I'm cranking the engine. It has to sound nice and consistent. if we don't have a mechanical problem with this engine. So let's crank it. Okay, so no clear flood mode on this car. Let's see if we have a compression test we can do with the scan tool to see if we can just have this engine crank. No clear flood mode on this one. So now what I'm gonna do is, let's go under the hood. I wanna rule out any possible mechanical issues. Let's go under the hood. I'm gonna disconnect all the ignition coils and then we're gonna crank the engine to see how it's gonna sound. Let's go under the hood and do that. I'm gonna show you what I did off camera. I disconnected all the ignition coils just to speed up the process. So there were 2 bolts over here that were holding this harness on the valve cover. So I got these disconnected. So we got all the coils on the passenger side bank disconnected. I'm gonna show you the ones on the driver's side. So I got these ones disconnected too. So we got these coils disconnected. So now, with all the coils being disconnected, if we crank the engine should not start, okay? Now, I have my lab scope here. My lab scope is connected to the jump post here under the hood. So this jump post should be connected to the battery. So I'm gonna go to our lab scope. I'm gonna turn off all these channels. We're gonna be on the voltage scale. We're gonna drop this down to 1 volt, and then we're gonna AC couple this. Perfect. And then we're gonna increase our time base to 1 second. All right. That doesn't really sound good. The engine cranks. It sounds a little funny. Let me see if I can adjust my... We might have to be at the battery to really get a good picture on this, because I don't see anything on the lab scope screen. Can you crank it one more time? Crank it again. All right, turn it off. Good. So I'm not seeing anything on the lab scope screen. I'm gonna try to get access to the battery so we can do our tests at the battery. Because right now I am connected over here at these jump points, but since this ground is through the frame, yeah, we may not really see the picture that I'm trying to see on the lab scope screen. So I'm going to figure out where the battery is, and then I'll bring you guys back up. The battery is located in the trunk on this vehicle, so we're gonna go do the test at the battery while our coils are disconnected under the hood. So let's go back here. So we already removed this. We already removed the cover. So I'm gonna remove this cover here. So I'm gonna put my lab scope right here. So we're gonna connect our yellow test lead to battery positive, and then black test lead is gonna go to battery ground to 20 volts. We should read battery voltage here. Something is not right. Oh, my test lead got disconnected. Guess what? Here's the problem. I was connected to the wrong lead. This is supposed to go here. Now, that's probably why we couldn't see anything under the hood. Because it was my bad. I made a mistake. Sorry, guys. So I'm going to AC couple this. We're going to drop this down to 1 volt. Okay. So we're going to look at our waveform on the lab scope. Ready? Yeah, crank it. Crank it again. All right, that's good. Perfect. So we're gonna analyze the data. I like what I see. Okay, so based on the peaks and valleys that we have across the lab scope, I don't think we have a mechanical problem with this engine, because if we did, one of these peaks was going to be lower than the others. Okay, and as you can see, they're all pretty much look identical. They all have the same height. Okay, now this test is not a 100% accurate test, but it gives us an indication or an idea of how the engine is running mechanically. So with the results that we have over here, we can already rule out a potential mechanical issue. So now the next test we're going to do is I want to test our ignition coils. I'm going to grab an ignition coil analyzer so we can check all the coils. Okay, because what I see over here on the lab scope screen tells me that our starter is actually drawing the same amount of current as it's pushing, as the crankshaft is pushing the pistons on each cylinders up towards top dead center on the compression stroke. So this is good. Now let's go under the hood so we can test our ignition coils. Now we're gonna reconnect our ignition coils. I'm gonna reconnect this one here, and then let me grab this screwdriver here. I'm gonna push this connector. There we go. Nice. Okay. So we got the coils on this side connected. I'm gonna install this bolt, and then this one over here. Okay, now let's do the same thing on this side. So I'm gonna connect the one back there first, because that one is a little tricky to get to. Now let's get these two over here. Nice. Nice. And then I'm going to install the screw. And then we're going to install the other screw that goes over here. I'm going to tighten it. Okay, the coils are installed. So now we're going to use this tool, this engine ignition analyzer. I love this tool. This is a great tool. So we're going to turn it on. The way this tool works is while the engine is running, we're going to put the tip of this tool on top of the ignition coil, and then it's going to show us the secondary waveform of the coil on the screen. We're going to compare the waveform of one cylinder to the one next to it. Whatever waveform that looks different from the other ones, that means that coil is not working well. So I'm gonna go in the vehicle and start the engine. Let me get my tools out of the way. So as you can hear, the engine is running. Let's go back under the hood. So I'm gonna put this right there. Check this out. Okay. And then we're gonna move it to this coil. So that kind of looks the same. Looks the same. Let's check this one out. Looks the same. Let's go to this one over here. Looks the same. That looks the same, kind of. That also looks the same. Okay. So our issue may not be ignition coils. Rev it. Rev it. All right. Let's check this one. Rev it. Rev it. I hope you guys can see this. Rev it. Okay, hold on. Let's try this one over here. I hope you guys can see. Okay, rev it. Rev it. Yeah, this cylinder over here, the spark line on this cylinder looks a little weird. Rev it. All right. Last one. Rev it. All right. Cool. Okay, turn it off. That wasn't really convincing. So at this point, what's going to be our next step? The waveform that I saw on the tool looked pretty identical to all the coils. So based on the data that I got from this tool, I can't really make a call because they all look the same to me. So I don't see a problem there. Now, the owner of this vehicle is very mechanically inclined. So I know he does some stuff by himself. I might have to call him to see if he replaced the spark plugs on this, because I know on these vehicles, if you get aftermarket spark plugs installed on these engines, you can have issues. Or the other thing that can cause this engine to misfire could be our fuel injectors. If we have injectors that are not spraying the correct amount of fuel in the cylinders, that can cause that too. So let me grab our scan tool. So I'm gonna look at the wiring diagram. I wanna see how these coils are wired and how the injectors are wired, because if there's a fuse somewhere that supplies power to the injectors and power to the coils, I can use a fuse body and we can use an amp clamp around the fuse that supplies power to the coils or the injectors, so we can see the current flow, the current draw of all the injectors. So let's look at the wiring diagram first. We got our vehicle here in our service info. Let's go to wiring diagrams. Let's go to our engine performance wiring diagram. This is a 3.0 liter. So I'm gonna find my ignition coils. Now I know we had cam sensors codes that we have to check too, but I just want to see if there's another issue that's causing this to misfire. Yeah, this is not port injection, it's direct injection. Now, the other thing that sometimes causes these direct injection engines to misfire is carbon buildup on the intake valves. So we could have too much carbon built up on the back of the intake valves. Now, we just don't want to remove the intake manifolds to check and see if we have a lot of carbon built up behind the valves. So now what I want to do is, actually, let me look at the coils first and see if there's a fuse that supplies power to all the coils. So we might have to change directions here. Let's see. Ignition signal, ignition term, body ground. So let's highlight this wire. Where does it go? So let's follow this red wire with the green tracer. Let's see where it goes to. It goes to fuse 14 premium panel. Okay, so our fuses are in the car. It looks like they are in the glove box. So fuse 14. So that's good to know. We can check the current ramp of all the coils to see if we have a coil problem, which I don't think we do based on the waveforms that we saw from our engine ignition analyzer. So here's what I'm gonna do. I would like to look at the back of the valves with my bore scope. I'm gonna get my bore scope. We're gonna remove this map sensor so we can get it into the intake manifold to see if we can look at the back of the valves. Okay, so I'm gonna get my bore scope and then I'll bring you guys back up. We are changing gears a little bit. I wanna look in the intake manifold to see what we have behind the valves, and hopefully we can see behind the valves. I'm gonna remove this map sensor. We're gonna disconnect it. We're gonna undo this little screw here. Okay, so here comes our map sensor. So now I'm going to use my bore scope. Okay, so this is the setup I'm gonna use my phone to see what's in the intake. Okay, so this is it right here. Now we're done with this tool, so I'm gonna get this out of the way. I'm gonna reinstall our map sensor. Yeah, too much carbon built up on the back of the valves. And since this vehicle has over 180,000 miles, I'm not surprised to see that. We saw what we saw on the back of the valves. There's too much carbon built up. So we're gonna have to remove the intake manifold so we can blast the valves. Once we clean the back of the valves, this engine should run a lot better, okay? Our coils are fine. I don't think we have an injector issue. We could still have an injector issue, but I don't wanna go through the pain of trying to find where the engine computer is, because the other test we could do is getting where the engine computer is and doing a current measurement, because all the injectors are buried over here under this intake manifold. We can get to the injector wiring at the electrical connector of the ECM. Then we can clamp our amp clamp around one of the injector wires and start the engine to see how much current the injectors are drawing. And then we can go, down the line and check all the injectors to see if they're all drawing the same amount of current. Now, we could still do that, but right now, you guys will see this. The carbon we have behind these valves is too much. This will cause the engine to misfire. We're gonna clean that first. So I'm gonna tell the customer, let's clean the back of the valves first. Let's reseal the intake manifold. Now, I'm gonna ask the customer when was the last time he did a tune-up. If it's been a while, I'm also gonna recommend replacing the spark plugs while we clean the valves, and then we're gonna start it and see how the vehicle drives. Now, I know we haven't taken this on a test drive yet. We might have to take the vehicle on a test drive to look at our fuel trim numbers, to see how our fuel trim numbers will look while the engine is idling and while we're driving, because the fuel trim numbers can also give us an indication of what kind of misfire we have, if it's fuel related or ignition related. But based on the data we got, I can already rule out a ignition problem. Okay, we don't have any ignition problem. So now there's one more test I want to do. I'm thinking right now because I want to collect all the possible data that I can collect before I talk to the customer. What other tests can we do? So we know we don't have a mechanical problem. Our ignition problem is not our ignition system is not the issue. What else can we check before we call the customer? Now, about the cam sensor codes we had. So I see a sensor over here. This looks like the intake cam position sensor. I don't know where the exhaust one is. The exhaust one is buried somewhere. Man, this is crazy. So, all right, guys. So let me figure out where the exhaust cam sensor is. And let me also figure out where bank 1 is, because we had codes for both cam sensors on bank 1. I don't know if bank 1 is the passenger side or the driver side. Let me figure that out, and then I'll bring you guys back up. I did do the research. Bank 1 is the bank on the passenger side, and bank 2 is the bank on the driver side. There are a couple more tests I want to do before we make a definitive call. Although when we did the test with the ignition analyzer, we didn't really see a difference between the waveforms on the analyzer's screen. What I'm going to do now is I am going to swap some coils around based on the information I got. Actually, my service info doesn't even have the firing order of this engine, so I had to do some Google search. So based on what I got, cylinder 2, remember, I'm going to show you the codes on the scan tool again when we bring up the scan tool. But so cylinder 1 is the first cylinder over here. So this is 1. So based on what I saw, it's 1, 3, 5, and then 2. So 1, I think it's 1, 3, 5, and then 2, 4, 6. So I'm gonna swap these coils around. So I'm gonna put the coil on cylinder 1 over here, and then this one I'm gonna put over here. And then the coil on cylinder 2, I'm going to put it on this cylinder, and this one I'm going to put it over here. If the misfire follows the coil, then we will know the coil is the issue, okay? I also want to look at the signals coming from the cam sensors. So we're going to look at the square wave coming out of the intake camshaft sensor and then the exhaust camshaft sensor. Getting to the exhaust camshaft sensor was a pain. It took me a while because it's hidden back there. It's at a weird angle. So I'm going to connect my test leads to, we're going to use our test drive test leads. We're going to use these long leads. So, because we could have sensors that are dropping out. So I want to make sure that we have good sensors. So I'm going to connect over here, and then Dom will come up here and show you guys. So I have this piercing tool connected to, so on the exhaust cam sensor, I'm connected to the 5-volt reference and the signal wire. So we can just focus over here, Dom. So I'm gonna connect to my second piercing tool right there. And then our first test lead, we're gonna connect it to the signal wire of the intake camshaft sensor. So right over here, okay? And then we're gonna ground our lab scope right there. Okay, so now the next step is let's swap the coils around. So I'm going to undo these bolts over here. So we're gonna disconnect the coils again. Now I had to remove the air filter out of the way so we could pull the coil out. So if you're wondering why we have this off, it's so that I could get access to the coils.
So now we're gonna disconnect this guy here, and then this guy. Perfect. Just like that. You can just focus over here, Dom. Okay, I got both coils disconnected. So now I'm gonna undo this one, and then this. So I believe we had two cylinders that were misfiring. It was cylinder 2 and cylinder 3, if I remember correctly. I mean, we're gonna double check, but I believe those were the cylinders that were misfiring. So let's swap these coils around and see what happens. Okay, so now we're gonna pull the coils out. So here's the one that was in this cylinder. We're gonna put it over here. And then I'm gonna pull this one out. I'm gonna put it over here. Okay, so we're just doing some swaptronics. We're just swapping things around to see what's gonna happen. Although I don't think that we have a defective coil, but you never know. Okay, so now we're gonna install this one over here. Okay, so we swapped the coils around. I'm gonna reconnect this. So let's reconnect the wires. Okay. Nice. Perfect. So now I'm gonna start the engine. So we have our scan data and our lab scope here. Now we don't have to go far. We're just gonna drive around here, and then we're gonna come back to the shop and scan the engine computer to see if our misfire is gonna follow the coil. Why is this thing beeping? Oh, it says hood. The hood is not... Oh, the hood is not closed all the way because of the test leads that I have under the hood. So, sorry guys, you're just gonna have to hear this annoying beep. So it looks like right now cylinder 4 is misfiring. Let's pick up some speed here. Okay, so both our cam sensors are producing the signal. Okay, both our intake and exhaust cam sensors on bank 1 are producing the signal, but the signal out of the exhaust sensor is dropping out sometimes. Okay. So I can't really look at the data. I gotta drive. I have to focus on the road. I'm gonna turn around here. I'm not gonna go too far. Let's go around the roundabout, and then we will drive back to the shop. When we get back to the shop, we're gonna scan the engine computer again to see what codes we have, and then we're gonna, we're gonna make a decision. Because the first thing we know is there is a lot of carbon buildup on the back of the valves. We saw that. Is your light dying? Oh, okay. Okay. So we're filming. It's getting late here. It's cold. We're doing all of this to get you guys good content. Since I can't really look at the data, I'm gonna drive back to the shop, and then once I get back to the shop, I'll bring you guys back up. I'm gonna pause our scope. We're gonna go and analyze this when we get to the shop. I'm gonna pause the scope. So, see you guys at the shop. We are back at the shop. I'm gonna turn off the engine. Actually, when we were driving back, it felt like the engine wasn't misfiring. So we're gonna analyze our cam sensor data. I just want to see how different this is gonna look from what we saw earlier. Okay, now let's look at our scanner here. So let's go to codes and see if we have any codes that came back. What? No codes. That's odd. No codes came back. So we're probably gonna have to drive this a little bit more. We swapped the coils, no codes came back. Guys, it's getting late here. I'm gonna drive this again tomorrow to see if there will be a code that comes back. If there's a code that comes back, I will bring you guys back up. But for now, as of what we have over here, I'm gonna recommend to the customer that we remove the intake manifold and clean the valves. You guys saw how dirty those were. And then I'm gonna also recommend doing a tune-up. So we're gonna replace all the plugs, and I'm also gonna recommend replacing the exhaust cam sensor on bank 1. And after that, this should be good to go. It is the next day. I drove this Porsche for a little longer. I took it on a test drive. I took it to launch yesterday. So I got a couple miles on it. And when I got back to the shop, we had 6 codes that came back. So I'm gonna show you the codes, and then I'm gonna do the repair off camera, like I said last time. I did talk to the customer. The customer is concerned about the misfire, so that is what we're gonna focus on. I know there was a brake light on the dash. There were brake trouble codes, pad wear sensor codes. He says he knows about it. The owner is very knowledgeable about his car. He's gonna replace the brake pads, sensors by himself. But he told me he doesn't want the misfire. That is what he wants us to fix. So let me show you the codes that we have. And then, so these are the codes that came back. As you can see, we don't have a misfire code. Our cam sensor codes came back. We have a few high pressure adaptation codes. So these are the codes that came back. What I told the customer is, based on what we saw from our bore scope, I'm gonna recommend a valve blasting. So we're gonna clean the back of the valves. We're gonna replace all the plugs. And then we're also gonna replace the exhaust camshaft sensor, because when I look at the codes, if we go to the generic side, I'm gonna show you the generic codes right here. On the generic side of the scan tool, only the exhaust camshaft sensor code is coming back. Crank position, cam position, correlation, bank 1, sensor B. So sensor B is the exhaust cam sensor. So that's what I'm gonna recommend. And then we're gonna drive the vehicle again. So this vehicle has a lot of issues. The owner knows about that. He doesn't want us to fix everything because it's gonna be a lot to fix. He told me, just fix the cam sensor code and fix the misfire, we should be good to go. Now, we don't have a timing issue. I know some of you might say it says on the code, crank position and cam position. Those can be caused by a timing problem, but I don't think we have a timing problem, although I did not do a cam and crank correlation test. But if we had a timing issue, we were gonna have more codes. So we're not gonna go that direction. Let's just do the valve blasting and then we should be good to go. Now, I won't do that on camera. I'm gonna do all of it off camera. I will probably bring you guys back up once I get the intake manifold out, so I can show you how dirty the valves are, and then I will do the rest of it off camera. So stay tuned. I'll bring you guys back up once I get the intake manifold removed. I'm gonna give you an update about this Porsche Macan that we were working on. We did a diagnosis. I made an estimate. I sent the estimate to the owner of the vehicle. I recommended doing a valve blasting, which consists of removing the intake manifold and cleaning the back of the valves. That was going to help with the misfire. And I also recommended replacing the intake manifold gaskets because we were going to remove the intake manifold. So when I remove the intake manifolds, I always recommend replacing all the gaskets. And then I also recommended replacing all the spark plugs, and we were also going to replace the exhaust camshaft sensor on bank 1. The customer received the estimate, and then he called me. He told me that he thought about how much he wants to spend in this vehicle. He realized that the vehicle has a lot of miles and it's probably going to need a lot of work in the future, because this vehicle has 184,000 miles. So he says, if I put this much money into the car right now, I don't know what else it might need. So I'm just gonna go ahead and trade it in. I'm gonna trade in the vehicle and buy another one. I told him, sure. I mean, if you're gonna trade in the vehicle, that's fine. Based on the mileage that the vehicle has and how old the vehicle is, I don't blame you. I mean, when the engine was running, there was a little ticking noise coming from the engine. So eventually he might have timing chain issues. So he's gonna come pick up the vehicle. We're not gonna get the job. He's gonna go trade it in. So I wanted to give you guys an update. We're gonna end this over here. I hope you liked the video. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't like the video, give it a thumb down. But if you do, tell us why so we can make better videos in the future. If this is your first time here, subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell so you can get notified every time we upload a new video. If you have any comments, questions, criticism, leave them in the comment box. Thanks for watching. See you next time.